You've seen them. The ones who smile a little too easily, a little too often. No matter what happens, awkward silence, tension, even subtle disrespect, they smile. Not a natural smile, not the kind that reaches the eyes, but something controlled, measured, almost like a mask. At first, you admire it. You think, this person is strong, unshakable, positive. But then something inside you whispers, why does it feel fake? Because deep down, you already know something most people ignore. People who smile too much are often hiding something far darker than sadness. Tonight, we're not just talking about fake smiles. We're exposing the psychology behind them. And more importantly, what it says about pain, control, and the silent battles people fight every single day. A real smile is effortless. It appears without permission and disappears just as naturally. It's a reaction, a moment, a reflection of something genuine happening inside. But an excessive smile, that's not a reaction. That's control. That's someone choosing, again and again, to present one emotion, no matter what they're actually feeling beneath the surface. And that changes everything. Because when a smile becomes constant, it stops being emotion and starts becoming strategy. Look closer. There's always that one guy. He walks into a room with calm confidence. His posture is relaxed. His tone is smooth. And his face always carries that same easy smile. He laughs at the right moments, nods at the right times, keeps everything light. People gravitate toward him. They trust him. They feel comfortable around him. But they never really know him, because that smile creates distance, while pretending to create connection. It's a perfect illusion, and the reason it works is simple. When someone smiles, we relax. We assume safety. We assume openness. We assume there's nothing hidden. So we don't question. We don't push deeper. We don't ask, what's really going on with you? That's the power of it. A smile doesn't just express emotion. It controls perception. And for someone who has experienced emotional pain, real pain, this becomes a survival tool. Maybe they trusted someone once and got betrayed. Maybe they opened up and got dismissed. Maybe they showed vulnerability and it was used against them. So they learned something dangerous. Never give people access to what's real. Because real emotions come with risk. Anger can create conflict. Sadness can invite judgment. Honesty can expose weakness. But a smile is safe. A smile keeps things smooth. A smile gives nothing away. So they wear it, constantly. Not because they're happy, but because it protects them from being seen, from being read, from being hurt again. Over time, it becomes automatic, a reflex, a mask so well practiced that even they forget when they started wearing it. They smile when they're uncomfortable. They smile when they are disrespected. They smile when something inside them wants to react, but doesn't feel allowed to, and the world rewards it. Such a positive guy, always in a good mood. Nothing seems to bother him. But that's the illusion, because what people call strength is often just suppression in disguise. That smile isn't a sign that nothing affects him. It's a sign that everything does. But he refuses to show it, and that's where the danger begins. Because when someone replaces every real emotion with a controlled expression, they don't just hide from others. They start hiding from themselves. They lose access to what they actually feel. They disconnect from their own reality. And all that's left is the mask. So understand this clearly. That constant smile, it's not happiness. It's not peace. It's not emotional strength. It's defense. It's what happens when someone learns, through experience, not theory, that being real comes at a cost they're no longer willing to pay. Part 2. The fear of being seen. Extended cinematic version. There's a moment most people never forget, not because it was loud or dramatic, but because of how quietly it changed them. It's the moment they decided it wasn't safe to be real. Maybe it happened in childhood. A boy expresses something honest, fear, sadness, insecurity, and instead of being understood, he's dismissed. Toughen up. Stop being weak. Or worse, he's laughed at. And in that moment, something small but permanent begins to form. A realization that vulnerability doesn't lead to connection. It leads to rejection. Or maybe it happens later, in a relationship. He opens up to someone he trusts. He shares something deeper than surface-level thoughts. Something real. And instead of being met with care, it's ignored, used against him, or treated like it never mattered. That kind of moment doesn't just hurt. It rewrites how a person sees the world. Because when honesty leads to pain, the mind adapts. It creates a rule, a quiet, internal rule that doesn't need to be spoken out loud. Never let people see the real you again. From that point on, everything becomes calculated, not in a manipulative way, but in a protective one. He begins to filter himself, to edit his reactions, to shape his personality into something that won't be rejected, something that won't be questioned, something that won't be hurt. And what's the easiest way to do that? You become agreeable. You become easy. You become someone people don't have to think too hard about. And above all, you smile. Because a smile is universal. It doesn't challenge anyone. It doesn't create tension. It doesn't reveal anything real. It simply says, I'm okay. There's nothing here to worry about. Even when that couldn't be further from the truth. You could insult him. He'll smile. You could overlook him. He'll smile. You could cross boundaries, dismiss his feelings, or push him aside, and he'll still smile. Not because he doesn't feel it, but because he's trained himself not to show it. Because showing it once cost him too much, and he's not willing to pay that price again. So the smile becomes automatic. A default response to everything. A way to maintain control. A way to avoid being seen. But here's the part most people don't understand. Over time, this doesn't just become something he shows to others. It becomes something he shows to himself. He stops acknowledging what he feels. He downplays it, suppresses it, replaces it with that same familiar expression. I'm fine. Even when he's not, especially when he's not. And eventually, the line between what's real and what's performed starts to blur. Because when you spend enough time hiding your emotions, you don't just protect yourself from others. You lose connection with yourself. And at that point, the fear isn't just being judged by people. It's being seen at all. Here's where it turns dangerous. Not obvious, not visible, but quietly destructive. Because emotions don't disappear just because you refuse to show them. They don't dissolve because you hide them behind a controlled expression. They stay, they wait, and over time, they build. You can suppress anger. You can bury frustration. You can ignore loneliness. You can cover pain with a smile so convincing that no one questions it. But none of it actually leaves. It accumulates beneath the surface, layer by layer, moment by moment. Every time something bothers you, and you pretend it doesn't, it stays. Every time you feel disrespected, and choose not to react, it stays. Every time you want to speak, but hold back, it stays. Anger, resentment, isolation, unspoken thoughts that never find a voice, unprocessed emotions that never find release. It all collects in silence. And the more someone relies on that smile to hide it, the deeper it gets pushed down, out of sight, but never out of reach. Imagine it like pressure building inside a sealed bottle. At first, it's manageable, barely noticeable. You tighten the cap and move on, but then it happens again, and again, and again. Each time, a little more pressure, a little more tension, a little less space to contain it, until one day, the bottle can't hold it anymore, and when it finally releases, it doesn't look like sadness. It doesn't look like someone quietly asking for help. It comes out in ways people don't expect. Distance, sudden emotional coldness, complete withdrawal, or sharp, explosive reactions that seem completely out of character. And the people watching are confused. They say things like, "I don't understand. He was always so positive. He never seemed bothered by anything. I thought he was fine." But that's the illusion the smile created, because what they saw wasn't peace, it was control. What they mistook for happiness was actually suppression. And when suppression breaks, it doesn't come out clean. It comes out distorted, unpredictable, heavy. Because the truth is simple, even if it's uncomfortable. The people who smile the most are often carrying the most, and the heavier it gets, the more isolated they feel. Not because no one is around them, but because no one ever truly sees them. Let's go deeper, because this isn't just about hiding emotions. It's about something more fundamental. The need to be accepted, the need to belong. And for some people, that need isn't casual. It's not optional. It feels like survival. Somewhere along the way, they learned a powerful equation. If people like me, I'm safe. Safe from rejection. Safe from conflict. Safe from being abandoned or overlooked. So they adapt, not consciously at first, but consistently. They start studying what people respond to, what gets approval, what avoids tension, and then they become exactly that. Easygoing, agreeable, low maintenance, always positive, always cooperative, never too loud, never too difficult, never someone who disrupts the mood, and above all, always smiling. Because a smile makes everything smoother. It keeps people comfortable. It keeps situations under control. It keeps them accepted. But there's a cost to this kind of adaptation. A quiet, invisible cost that builds over time. Because you cannot be fully real and be liked by everyone at the same time. At some point, you have to choose, and they do. Again and again. They choose acceptance over authenticity. They say yes when everything inside them wants to say no. They agree when they don't actually agree. They laugh at things that don't feel right. They tolerate behavior that crosses their boundaries. And they smile through all of it. Not because they're okay with it, but because they're afraid of what happens if they're not. Afraid of disapproval. Afraid of conflict. Afraid of being seen as difficult. Or worse, being left behind. So they keep adjusting, keep reshaping, keep editing themselves to fit into whatever space they're in. Until eventually, something starts to fade. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but slowly. Their opinions feel less clear. Their reactions feel less honest. Their identity becomes blurred. Because when you spend enough time being who others expect you to be, you lose track of who you actually are. And one day, it catches up in a quiet moment. No distractions, no audience, just a reflection staring back at them. And it feels unfamiliar, disconnected, like looking at someone they built, but never truly became. That's the part no one talks about. The part hidden behind the constant smile. It's not just pain being covered up. It's identity being erased, piece by piece. until all that's left is something acceptable, but no longer authentic. But here's what most people don't talk about. The mask doesn't last forever. It can't. No matter how disciplined someone is. No matter how controlled they appear. No matter how convincing that smile becomes. There is always a breaking point. Not the kind you see in movies. Not loud, not chaotic. Not something that announces itself. It's quieter than that. More dangerous, in a way. Because it happens internally. Slowly, gradually. Until one day, the weight of everything they've been holding in becomes too heavy to carry. It's the exhaustion that gives it away first. Not physical exhaustion. Emotional exhaustion. The kind that makes even simple interactions feel draining. The kind that turns conversations into obligations. The kind that makes a smile feel like effort instead of instinct. And then something shifts. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough to change direction. They stop smiling as much. They don't force reactions the way they used to. They pause. They think. They begin to notice how often they've been performing instead of living. And for the first time, they hesitate before giving people the version of themselves they expect. That hesitation is important, because in that space, something real begins to surface. They start saying no, not aggressively, not to prove a point, but simply because they mean it. They allow silence, where they once filled every gap with artificial ease. They stop explaining themselves unnecessarily. They stop overcompensating for other people's comfort. And it feels uncomfortable. At first, almost unbearable. Because they've spent so long avoiding tension, avoiding disapproval, avoiding anything that might disrupt the image they built. That stepping outside of it feels wrong, like they're doing something they are not supposed to do. But that discomfort isn't weakness. It's unfamiliarity. It's what happens when someone finally steps out of a pattern that no longer serves them. For the first time in a long time, they're not hiding. They're not filtering every reaction. They're not shaping themselves to fit expectations. They're just responding honestly. And that honesty feels raw, unpolished, real. That's where transformation begins. Not in confidence, not in perfection, but in truth. Because the same person who once used a smile as armor is now learning something far more powerful: how to stand without it. They begin to understand things they couldn't see before. That not everyone has to like them. That being respected is more important than being agreeable. That discomfort doesn't always mean danger. Sometimes it means growth. They realize that constant approval is a fragile foundation, and that authenticity, even when it creates friction, is far more stable. So they start rebuilding, not the version of themselves that was easy to accept, but the version that is honest to live with. They reconnect with their opinions, their boundaries, their real emotions, even the uncomfortable ones, especially the uncomfortable ones. Because those emotions aren't the enemy, they're signals, they're clarity, they're truth, and slowly, that need to smile all the time begins to fade. Not because they become cold, not because they've stopped caring, but because they no longer need to hide. They smile when it's real. They stay neutral when it's not. They express themselves without filtering everything through fear. And there's a different kind of strength in that. A quieter one, a grounded one. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything. Because it's not built on perception anymore. It's built on truth. And that version of them, the one that doesn't perform, the one that doesn't pretend, The one that no longer trades authenticity for approval. That version doesn't need a constant smile, because it's no longer protecting anything. It's finally free. So the next time you see someone who smiles all the time, pause for a second. Look beyond the surface. Because not every smile means peace. Not every smile means confidence. And not every smile means they're okay. Sometimes it means they've learned how to survive without being seen. Sometimes it means they've mastered the art of hiding in plain sight. And sometimes it means they've been carrying more than anyone ever noticed. But here's the part that matters most. If you recognize yourself in this, if you've been the one smiling through things you never spoke about, if you've been choosing comfort over honesty, acceptance over truth, then understand this clearly. You don't have to live like that forever. You don't have to earn your place by hiding who you are. You don't have to protect yourself by disconnecting from yourself. Because real strength isn't in how well you can hide your emotions. It's in how honestly you can face them. It's in saying what you mean, feeling what's real, and allowing yourself to exist without constantly performing for the world. Not everyone will understand that version of you. Not everyone will accept it, but the right people will. And more importantly, you will. And that changes everything. Because at the end of the day, a forced smile might protect you from the world, but it also keeps the world from ever truly knowing you. So stop hiding behind it. Not all at once, not perfectly, but honestly. Because the moment you stop pretending is the moment you start becoming someone real. Obsidian mind. See what others refuse to see.